G'day community, and welcome to Triggered, Utopia's community podcast. I'm your host Benjamin. Why don't you head on down to the bar, pour a drink, and relax. Today is part 2 of the Hawk interview. I hope you enjoy. We're on the current Utopia, which is defined as age 30 onwards. Okay, many players are known for taking the ages off for a break. Are you currently playing Utopia, and if so, with who?
I am currently playing, although it's just a ghetto. I kind of wanted to experiment with what they're doing with races, what they're doing with science, how they're improving it, or what's going on. Just kind of in game to see what's going on, rather than talk to people just to get their perspective. But don't get me wrong, I think I log probably once every 2 days. I'm currently in avian, so
wow.
My army stays home for a long time.
All right, so in one of your first stages back, you did something that sort of drew a bit of attention to your gaming style. You joined Beast Blood, I believe, and implemented an interesting strategy with pretty solid success. For those unaware, can you explain what you did there and sort of how you did it?
Sure, I will go into some detail. I would like to keep some of my trade secrets a secret, though.
Yeah, so before we started this, Hawk brought this question up and just mentioned he didn't want to tell everybody everything, and that's fine. He's just going to give you a rough idea on how he did it.
Yeah, sure. So it was one of the first stages I came back. I joined Beast Blood, Protector, Fair, great guys, great kingdom. So I wanted to play with them again, and they were welcoming. I was lucky enough to play with them one more time, and we didn't really have much of a strategy. There was a plan for everybody to slack, and of course that didn't go very well. We ended up somewhere in the top 5 or something, and again forced to kind of play well so as not to like chart shape or anything like that by just giving up all our acres. So in doing so, a lot of ceasefires were granted. Protector is very good at doing politics and negotiating and dealing with relations with other kingdoms. So, I need to give credit to Protector, because the things that I was able to do are in direct relation to the things that he was able to do for the kingdom with ceasefires and all that stuff. So that being said, I was an orc the first time I tried it. So I'm not quite sure which age you're talking about. The first age I did it was as an orc, and I don't actually remember if halflings had the two soldiers at the time or not. I think that might have started the following age, but I did it as an orc the first age, and I did it fairly well. I was able to random grab, not giving anybody relations, from about 4,000 acres up to about 10,000 acres. And from 10, that was just normal attacking, nothing special. I think I had a whole bunch of barren land to keep my net worth lower than normal, but I wasn't performing anything special out of the ordinary to further lower my net worth. But by this time I'm 10,000 acres with all barren land. I was still too big to actually make decent gains. So I came up with this idea. I don't claim that I'm the first person to ever come up with the idea, but my thought as to the best way to continue growing quickly was to, instead of having an actual army, to have soldiers as my army, so that I could send out the soldiers and make an attack and then get the soldiers back as my defense. So essentially I was able to do that up to about 23,000 acres. And
which is quite large.
Yeah, 23,000 acres by random grabbing. Now, I was actually to do, this first age where I had very good success as an orc, I was hitting twice a day using each general as a separate army. So I was making 8 attacks a day and not giving any kingdoms relations. So, there was also at this time, Beast Blood, the kingdom, the other players in the kingdom had to sacrifice a lot of targets, a lot of kingdoms that they could not hit because, they had the only targets that I could hit. So credit needs to go to the other members of Beast Blood as well to, allow me to do it. But for the most part, everybody wanted to slack and nobody wanted to log in and be active and all that stuff. Unfortunately, though, because of what I was doing, drew, I think maybe three or four wars because of that. at least in the early stages. So I think we ended that age 5 war wins. I didn't end up doing very well at the end. By the time I got really, really large, we ended up going to war with a kingdom twice, and they were able to gate all the advantages I had. So I think I ended 12 or 14,000 acres, something small and insignificant. But the following age, I chose halfling. They had gotten 10% population bonus. They had 2/2 soldiers. They had aggression, which made my soldiers stronger. Not that I actually used that often, but if I needed to, it was there.
So, for those who are interested, I'm going to put the slide up on the screen whilst we've been talking about it. It shows you there that you got to, was it 23,000 something acres without 1 acre explored? Is that right?
Yeah, so in this particular age, I managed to get to the 23,000 acres. I was 9,000 honor, and I had explored 0 acres, which was, to me, I was impressed myself by being able to accomplish that. And
Absolutely.
had I not gotten us into that, one of those last wars, I think there was like 6 weeks left in the age. It was kind of ridiculous. This is one of the ages that went on to, I think, year 17 or 18.
Yep.
So at about year 12 or 13, this was my size. I was 23,000 acres, 2.5 million, and I was really close to number 1 honor. Nobody really knows. I had made a deal with Mango that if I became number 1 honor, he would let me hit him. And at the time, he was 25,000 acres. He was going to be 35,000 acres. And he was okay making the deal because, at the time we made the deal, I was, 4,000 honor or something. I was 6,000 acres. And, if I were ever able to make it to number 1 honor, which, was a pipe dream at the time, there's no way that there would be enough time left in the age for me to have enough land or have enough net worth to be able to actually gain anything off of him. So eventually he went along with the deal. We made the deal, got it saved on my computer for record keeping purposes. And yeah, at this point in time, when I was that large, we had enough time left in the age. Now we kind of knew how much time was left in the age because it was right around Christmas time, or it was this early December, and most of the time the developers don't reset the age around Christmas time. They wait till after the holidays. So at best case scenario, I was able to calculate how much time I had left. And if we hadn't gotten into the war that eventually destroyed me, I would have probably been able to grab up to about 35,000 acres, at which point,
Nice.
being a princess, and I was war hero, having the princess war hero bonuses, I would have been able to pump so easily. And Mango will argue with me to this day that I wouldn't have been able to break him, but my calculations show that I would have probably hit him for about 6,000 acres and been over 40,000 acres with 0 land explored. It was going to be awesome. Unfortunately, none of that unfolded. We got into a couple wars and I got destroyed. So everything was foiled.
Speaking of like Beast Blood and the current kingdoms, how do you think they would stack up against the older kingdoms like a Brute Force or a Beauty from back in the day? Do you think things like Monkbot and communication platforms such as WhatsApp and activity in general would come into play? How do you think they would stack up essentially?
I do think that all the current tools that we have now are incredible for bringing new players up to speed very quickly, keeping them in the loop. Activity is obviously a huge part of doing well and understanding how the game works and all that stuff to really gain your interest in the game and wanting to come back and keep playing. How it compares to back in the day, the current top kingdoms compared to the older top kingdoms, we did have utilities back in the day, similar to not anything like the bots in the game, but there were websites. I actually remember the name of the website we used, Zumbush, and it was essentially like your Monkbot the Intel website. So we were able to gather intel and check when spells were expiring and all that stuff through the website. It wasn't until later on, closer to the 30s, I think, where bots really started becoming prevalent in IRC, where people were able to use them to not only pull intel, but I'm sure you remember that there used to be a method of getting like 2 SOMs to get an accurate defense.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a much stranger way of getting intel than it is now, where it can just get completely accurate information. You actually had to figure things out, and some of the platforms, like the bots, started doing that for you in the mid 20s, I think, which was really cool. But I think what these tools really help now is creating an even playing field for everybody. Whereas back then, if you didn't have something that was able to do this for you, you couldn't compete.
Yeah, I agree. I think the older players or a lot of the older players will probably say they wouldn't be able to stack up with the newer kingdoms. But in all reality, like when I was playing in the top a few ages ago, the activity there was pretty insane, even compared to back in the ages. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think back in the day, it really, in order to be a top kingdom, it was really just the activity and the know-how of the mechanics. If you didn't understand the game, you couldn't really play well, no matter how active you were. But those two things together made you a good kingdom, and a lot of people understand how to play the game well now. Essentially because of the wiki and just the community in general, getting that information out there. But activity back then, I had my computer on all the time with IRC open and the volume up, so that anytime somebody needed me when I was in the house, I heard it and I could go over there, because cell phones weren't around, at least not as popular as they are now in like early 2000. So you didn't have cell phones to call people, text message, WhatsApp, like that stuff wasn't around. So it was really something to be able to be as active and as coordinated as you were back then, as compared to now, where somebody can send you a text message and you can make an attack from your phone like 30
Sure,
seconds later. It's
handy,
completely different.
very handy.
Oh yeah.
So speaking about the top, I'm going to ask you a semi-controversial question here, and when I say controversial, the top will agree probably one direction, and the Warring Kingdoms will agree in a different direction. But the differing politics in the top over the years have developed the game into something where diplomacy plays a huge part on who wins the age. Do you think this is the right direction for the game, or are you of the belief that in-game relations is all we need?
I am not really sure. I've never been one to do politics.
I guess you returned back into this, didn't you? You would have
Yeah.
left before most of it. Well, not before most of it, before it became as prevalent.
Yeah, when I left, it wasn't like it is now, and when I came back, it was just something completely different and strange to me. So before, like I said, I never was involved in politics before. I just played the game, and when I came back now, I don't want to get to know how to do the politics. I really have relied on the kingdoms that I've played with. I played with CR a little bit and Beast Blood. Those guys are good at it, so I let them be good at it and do it for me. Whether it's right or wrong for the game, I don't really know.
We almost past being able to answer that. I think we've developed the game to a point where we just kind of have to accept it, because ceasefires and outside of the game relations or talks of relations enable players who are a lot more active than most people believe to have some time off between wars and stuff. That's the big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, I agree with that. I don't I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for the game in general. And I think that if the game were to become more popular and to grow, have better competition, have more competition, then it would move away into a different direction that would be better for that state of the game. So I think, like you said, this is just how it works in the current state of the game. And if the state of the game were to change, then I think it would also change.
In the past, the Utopian community has hosted IRC events such as alliance summits, where top kingdoms and alliances came together just to try and work out some basic utopian policing. These events were semi-successful at best, with varying people agreeing to different guidelines. How important do you think it is that we effectively police our own server from shit play?
Well, I actually think it's very important that the community be involved in things that the rules don't necessarily cover. But I also think that it's possible more could be done by the administration. So I don't necessarily think that it should all fall onto the community to police things, but I certainly, you can't really expect the admins or the developers to do things to whether it's right or wrong. I don't really know, but I certainly think it's an important part that things that shouldn't happen should be dealt with by the community.
Yeah, sure. So the top has had a bit of a gripe with the game system for a while. What do you prefer, land or net worth based games, and why? What do you think is the fairest system?
Well, I don't think there's actually one or the other. I think the best way is probably going to be a combination of the two, where one affects the other. There were obviously problems with the land-based gains, which is why it didn't last for very long, in comparison to network-based gains. But as we see now, and with the things I was able to do, what Emirati's doing right now,
Net worth is easily manipulated.
net worth can be very easily manipulated. Not that it's wrong or right or wrong, but it certainly has its drawbacks, and I think there probably is a better way. We just need to figure that out and hope for the best.
Okay, so moving on to future Utopia. Utopia, to the untrained eye, looks pretty boring. We're all fighting an uphill battle of survival for the game we love. My next question is broken down into two sections. I'm going to ask this to every person that comes on the show. How do we attract new players to the game? And secondly, how do we keep enough players to forge our future generation of monarchs?
I certainly think that word of mouth is really important. If I like this game, I want to tell everybody that not necessarily everybody that I interact with, but my close friends, especially when I first started, I brought in 5 of my close friends to play. And as you said before, it wasn't just invite them to your kingdom and you're playing together. I had 5 of my friends playing, real life friends playing in different kingdoms until, we were able to, eventually get them into my kingdom, which I only ever got 2 of them in. But it was a great game. It was a lot of fun. We were able to talk about it and what are we doing? How's it going? All that stuff just by having them around and playing in the other kingdoms. So, I think word of mouth is important, and not just in real life, but internet communities, all that stuff. Like if
Social media.
Yeah, if we want the game to grow, if we want the game to do well, it's kind of on us to really do that. I think one big part of it is also like the community needs to probably be a little bit more accepting, and
channels like Tactics perhaps need to be a little bit more accepting at times as well. I mean, it's a great channel, but sometimes it can be a bit rough in there.
Yeah, I mean, moderation I think is huge. There's certainly, I don't get to spend as much time in IRC or in Tactics as I might like to, but people tell me all the time that things happen in there that probably shouldn't, and just nobody does anything about it. I think that is a problem, especially for new people.
Can you just hold on one second? I'll tell my housemates to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Stop fucking yelling, I'm recording. All I can hear is fucking you yelling in the background. Sorry, mate, hold on.
That's all right.
He's like, ooh, sorry. All right.
So the second, you had another part to that question.
Yeah, so the second part was how do we keep player retention? How do we retain players, essentially?
My theory on this has always been that, if we can make the game sort of more competitive and keep fair play, if we can grow the game through competition and fair play, I think that would do a lot for it. It's really the atmosphere that's created in the game where, if we can get people to stay and generate a bigger, more competitive environment for the game to grow, it'll kind of work itself out. That's my theory anyway, and I hope it gets better. That's all.
Yeah. Do you think there's any way we can unify a common goal between the Warwin and Land Kingdoms?
I don't think so. This might be a good sort of community discussion thing to have, because, I don't know if there really is a way to do that.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I think we've probably left it a little bit too late for that. Earlier, we were talking about the war meter. Do you think the current hostile war system works? Or would you support an overhaul, either a new system or back to the old one?
Well, I do think that the current system, works in some capacity, but I also think that it could be better. What would make it better, I'm not really sure, but I certainly think it has some merit to it right now.
The final question I want to hit you up with, mate, in this interview is, what mechanical race purse change would you like to see implemented in the future, and why? Do you think an old race back, or maybe a new mechanic perhaps?
I'm certainly not big on bringing in new races and things like that. I think it just gets too complex when you bring in too much, and I would certainly want to see a better gain system. That's what I really, really would like. I've said for a while to bring back land-based gains. Now, granted, that's not just the answer to bring land-based gains back, but
I agree.
It would certainly be fun. But I think something needs to be done about the gain system, whether it's revert to something else or try to come up with a better system to really encompass the whole thing.
I agree that the land-based system is a better system than net worth system, but it's not perfect. All right. That's it, mate. That's the last question for the show. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for dropping by.
All right, thank you.
We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Trigger Utopia's podcast. We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Trigger Utopia's podcast. It's the Trigger Utopia's podcast. We coming at you smooth and we moving real fast. Attacking, defending, you know how we do. It's the gaming podcast set up just for you. We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Trigger Utopia's podcast.